All right, let's jump right in. What we're about to go through is a 9-rule framework for money that literally saved 2 of my companies from going under. Seriously, this isn't some business school theory. It's a real-world survival guide. These are the rules that will keep your startup alive when absolutely everything is on the line. And I want you to really let that sink in. This single idea is the heart of everything we're going to talk about. It's not about having no cash. It's about having no awareness. It's about flying blind until you hit the side of a mountain. It's a brutal lesson, and trust me, you do not want to learn it when your bank account is already at 0. I learned this the hard way. I actually sold my company to WeWork back when they were on top of the world, when they'd raised over $20 billion. I had a front row seat as one of the most hyped startups in history completely imploded in just 6 months. And look, they had it all: a fantastic product, a huge vision, a world-class team. But they were missing that crucial 4th leg of the stool: financial discipline. And what we all learned is you can have the other 3, but if you don't master the money, the whole thing will still collapse. So, how do you avoid that kind of fate? Well, it all starts by changing your entire relationship with your company's finances. We have to get away from that end-of-the-month panic attack and instead build something I call a financial rhythm. Think of it just like your own body, right? That daily glance you take at your cash balance, that's your pulse. You're just checking if you're alive. Then there's the weekly vitals check. That's your non-negotiable 15-minute money stand-up. And finally, the monthly deep dive, where you close the books. That's your full physical exam. You absolutely need all 3 to stay healthy and stay alive. Okay, so you've established a rhythm. That's great. But that rhythm is completely useless if you're looking at the wrong data. So this next set of rules is all about getting to the absolute, undeniable truth of your financial picture. Not the version you tell investors, and definitely not the one you tell yourself in the mirror at 2 a.m. And that brings us to a really critical question. The main tool most founders rely on, the profit and loss statement, or P&L, well, it's often a liar. It's not malicious or anything, but it's designed for accountants to file taxes. It's not designed for founders who are just trying to figure out if they can make payroll on Friday. So this brings us to rule number 1. You must build a 13-week cash flow view. And forget all those fancy forecasts and complicated spreadsheets. This is a living, breathing document that you update every single week with 3 simple things. How much cash do we start with? How much cash actually cleared and hit our bank account? And every single dollar that went out the door. Payroll, rent, vendors, you name it. And this is not some academic exercise. I had a portfolio company whose investor update proudly said they had 8 months of runway. We sat down and built this simple 13-week view, and what did we find? The truth? They had 11 weeks. We had to slash $40,000 a month in expenses in less than 48 hours just to save them. The P&L would have let them walk right off a cliff. And this leads right into rule number 2. You have to speak 2 languages. The first is cash basis. That's the language of survival. It answers one simple question: do we have the money right now to pay our bills? The second is accrual basis. That's the language of growth, the one you use for investors. For example, if a client pays you $500,000 for the year up front, accrual accounting smooths that out to show a nice, steady growth curve. But cash accounting tells you the reality. You have $500,000 in the bank today. You have to be fluent in both. All right, so you know what's really on the bank. Now what? How do you decide what to do with it? This is the classic founder's paradox, right? You have to spend money to grow, but every single dollar you spend shortens your company's life. So rule number 3 is a decision framework that acts as a check against your own emotions and optimism. For every major decision, like a big hire or a new marketing campaign, you run 3 scenarios. First, the bear case. What if our revenue suddenly drops 10%? Does this decision kill us? Second, the base case. If things just go according to plan, is this the best use of our cash? And finally, the bull case. What if revenue grows 10%? Will we regret not doing this? It just forces you to be brutally honest about the real stakes. Now, this next rule is about preparing for the good surprises, because opportunity does not wait. I once got an acquisition offer from a huge CEO through our generic support email address. I'm not kidding. And I was in a meeting with them the very next day. If it had taken me 3 weeks to get my documents together, that deal would have been dead on arrival. The momentum would have just vanished. And that's exactly why rule number 4 is to always have a lightweight data room ready to go. We're just talking about 10 or so key files like the ones you see here: your deck, your financials, your cap table, key contracts. But the side benefit here is huge. Even if you never sell,
This process forces you to keep a clean house. So when an investor asks how much you spend on AWS, you have the answer in 30 seconds, not 3 days. And speaking of a clean house, let's talk about corporate cards. This is rule number 5. Startups can die from 1,000 small cuts, and corporate cards are often one of the sharpest knives. Founders hand them out like candy, saying, "Oh, we trust our team." But here's the thing. Trust doesn't scale. Policy does. You need a dead simple, clear policy that states who gets a card, what the limits are, and that receipts are required within 24 hours. No exceptions. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a dozen subscriptions you don't even need and wonder why your burn rate suddenly spiked by 10%. Okay, so we've covered the mindset and the tools. But tools are totally useless without a system. This next section is all about building your financial operating system. It's about automating with discipline. The goal here is to create a machine that runs without heroes. Because if your whole process falls apart when one person gets sick, you don't have a system. You have a single point of failure. Which brings us to Rule 6. Track just 3 to 5 critical metrics every single week. That's it. Founders either drown themselves in dashboards or they fly completely blind. You just need the essentials. Look at this example on the slide. Simple, red, yellow, green. It tells the whole story instantly. Runway is down 2 weeks, so it's red. Weekly burn is over budget, also red. This isn't about judging people. It's about creating instant, shared accountability. The whole team sees the same truth in 5 minutes flat. Rule 7 is maybe my favorite of all, the monthly one-pager. Your board does not need a 40-slide deck. They need clarity, and this structure forces focus. The top third is all about cash and runway. The middle is budget variance, what did we get right and what did we get wrong, and the bottom is for risks and decisions. You literally cannot hide in a one-pager. It demands the truth. Rule number 8 is all about building the machine with automation, starting with a ridiculously simple approval system like this one. This 3-tier process just gets rid of all the friction and confusion. For small expenses under $1,000, you empower your managers to approve them and move on. For anything over $10,000, the big strategic stuff, the CEO needs to be in the loop. It's about matching the level of oversight to the size of the risk. And the rest of the machine? It's built with simple, solid tools. A monthly close checklist, so the same 12 things happen in the same order every single time, no matter who's doing it. A simple chart of accounts, maybe 15 to 20 categories max. If you can't figure out where an expense belongs in 5 seconds, your system is already too complicated. Simplicity is speed. And that brings us to our final, and honestly, most important rule. This one takes us out of tactical survival and into the strategic defense of your single most valuable asset, your equity. Finally, rule number 9, understand that your equity is the most expensive currency you will ever spend. This slide just lays out the choice perfectly. In scenario A, you raise $500,000 for 10% of your company. Okay. If you sell for $20 million down the road, that 10% just cost you $2 million. In scenario B, you cut $40,000 a month in expenses. The cost in equity? 0. Before you raise a dime, you always have to ask which path saves the most ownership. So let's make this real. Here's your action plan. Immediately, like right after you finish watching this, calculate your real runway. Total cash in the bank divided by your monthly burn. If it is less than 12 months, you are in the red zone. This week, your number 1 priority is to build that 13-week cash flow sheet. And this month, commit to creating and sharing your very first monthly one-pager. You can start this literally today. Let's just end with this. Look, finance isn't sexy. It's not a cool growth hack, but it will keep you alive. Once you install this system, it becomes almost impossible to fail by accident. So the final question is, when the fire starts, and believe me, it will, are you going to know where the fire extinguisher is? This system is that extinguisher. Now, go build it.